Some magazine.
Hey, Group Believers, Dave Dreher here. Got a great interview for you today, as I've been doing recently, kind of getting more into the literary end of things. And Brian, I apologize. I forgot to ask you before we started. I wanted to make sure I got your name pronunciation right, but I'm going to go with Brian Raftery.
Oh my gosh, you got it right. Good for you.
Uh,
That's a rare skill you have.
well, I was like, it's either Raftery or Rafferty. You never know with these things. So
I don't know if you're Irish or part Irish, but you got to see. If not, you got a secret Irish in you somewhere because you got that right on the first go.
fantastic. Well, you have a new book coming out here in February called Hannibal Lecter, A Life, and it's actually kind of a biography of a fictional character. But it's much, much more than that. And that's why I love this book so much.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
I didn't know what to get in. I didn't know what I was getting into when I got into this. I'm like, how are you going to do a biography on someone that doesn't actually exist? you know, but you pull it off, and you do that by kind of taking us on a deep dive into Thomas Harris, and then you kind of go into the how the film versions came around and kind of all that background stuff. And my first question for you is, what led you down this path? What made you get up one morning and go, I have to tell the tale of Dr. Hannibal Lecter?
Well, I mean, I have a weird relationship with The Silence of the Lambs because it was a movie that scared me and intrigued me before I even saw it. I actually didn't see it when it came out in theaters, and I have a very strong memory of. I mean, I don't know if you have younger listeners. I don't want to give a bad impression, but I was very much a high school student who like brought Mad Magazine and Rolling Stone and magazines to class and read when I should have been studying or listening to the teacher. And I remember sitting in I think an eighth grade Spanish class. I don't know why I remember this, reading Peter Travers' review of Silence of the Lambs in Rolling Stone. And just at that point, I was 14. I was like, this is a movie. This is something this guy eats people and this is good. Like, this is supposedly a great film. And it's about, I mean, it never hadn't dawned on me at that point. I liked horror, but I'd also not been able to see a lot of horror movies growing up. So the idea, I mean, obviously I was aware of Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist, so I knew there were horror movies that sometimes could transcend the genre critically, and at least and find a big audience. I was shocked by this film, and I didn't even see it in this wide release. I didn't see it until it came out on VHS, and I was obsessed with it from the moment I saw it. It was like I think it was one of the first DVDs I bought. It was one of the first laser discs I owned with Sounds of the Lambs. It was definitely one of the first commentary tracks I ever heard because it was a very early commentary track. So I've always loved these films. When Hannibal, the book came out, I was very excited for that. I read that. I think I read that in paperback and read it on a flight the entire way. And so it was always in my head, sort of like this movie and this character. There's something about it that has never gone away. And then what happened was I had talked to my agent a couple of years ago about doing a Silence of the Lambs book, and it just didn't go anywhere. And then I went to a screening of Manhunter out in Los Angeles at the Aero Theater a couple of years ago with Michael Mann in attendance. And they do this great thing now. I love going to these repertory shows because I'll go see a movie that I love, and they'll say, "Okay, how many people here are seeing this for the first time?" And all these hands went up for Manhunter, and I knew how hard it was to get tickets for this. So you had to get up on early, get online at 10 o'clock. So these people were fighting to see a movie that they hadn't even seen before. And part of it was just like, again, it's like the myth of Hannibal Lecter and how big he's become in these last 20, 30 years. And so I realized that not only is Silence of the Lambs this landmark film, but everything Hannibal related now, Manhunter, the Hannibal TV show, even Hannibal Rising, they all have their own followings now. And so I figured, okay, at this point, I think there's a book here. I think this character who, first of all, I mean, Hannibal Lecter is barely in some of these books. He's barely in Red Dragon. He's barely in The Silence of the Lambs. I mean, he's in maybe, I counted how many pages he's in, but it's not a lot, maybe 12 pages in Silence of the Lambs. He's not in the movie very much. And then Tom Harris would take years off from writing these novels. And yet, even with all that disappearance, all that absence, this character has never been more culturally prevalent. I mean, it's remarkable how long he's lasted. And so I just thought it'd be fun to look at how he was created, how these films were made that were based on it, and also what its impact has been. And looking at Tom Harris himself, who is really one of the true actual literary recluses left in America. I mean, he's given 3 interviews, as far as I can tell, over the course of 50 years. So he's a fascinating guy in himself, and trying to find anything I could about him. So it was a mix of like looking at this character, looking at how these movies and this TV show and these books were made, but also just kind of looking the bigger picture of like, what did Hannibal Lecter, what does he mean to people, and how does his rise kind of tie with the rise of true interest in true crime and serial killer culture in America?
Yeah, it was absolutely fascinating. Again, I had known Thomas Harris took years between books, but I had no idea he was as reclusive as he is. He's kind of like Hannibal Lecter. He's like not
Yeah.
involved in his promotion much at all. I mean, he
No, he's got a
really.
great life. He's sold 50 million books, and he travels. He spent decades traveling the world. Much like Hannibal Lecter, he's got very good taste in food. He likes sports cars. He likes to travel. I mean, he is. At a certain point, you don't want to say he is Hannibal Lecter because that's probably litigious in some ways. But there's a
There's
reason
probably a
why.
lawsuit in there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why this guy and this was able to bring this character to life so vividly. I mean, this idea of having a character who pursues what he wants so unabashedly, I think is what people love about Hannibal Lecter so much.
And when you actually open the book talking about how President Trump has recently been bringing him up as interview, that's kind of how you bring this out. Like he's still prevalent now in
Yeah,
2025, 2026, because
yeah.
our leaders are bringing him up, and that was kind of your entrance way into the way that Hannibal is still so important in today's pop culture, and it's just fascinating. And I don't want to ruin the read for anyone, but but there are some things in here that I don't know that anyone could have known until you've uncovered them. I mean, there's some truly bizarre things that kind of go on through the growth of this character and his transition from a literary character into a film character and then into a TV character. What was, without giving anything away, what was the most surprising revelation you
I think
found?
there were a couple of things. I mean, specifically about the Silence of the Lambs, I was very lucky in that I got to go to the University of Michigan and go through Jonathan Demme's archives, which hadn't been looked at in a long time. They're in the process of cataloging them, and so it's just if you love I mean, I was trying to explain this to other friends of mine who are movie fans, and I want all my friends who are movie fans to have this experience at some point in your life where you think about a movie and read about it for years and years, decades, and then all of a sudden someone says, hey, here's 13 boxes full of everything you ever wanted to know about how they made this movie, which no one has read, and you can just spend a whole week. And so, going through all the memos and the casting ideas and the script versions and talking to people who worked on the film, that stuff's great. And same with Manhunter, and and same with the other properties. Same with talking to Brian Fuller about Hannibal. I think this stuff. I think the thing that really kind of surprised me was when I started out, I was thinking, okay, well, I'm going to really try to see if they're, I'm going to really try to track this fascination with serial killers in America with Silence of the Lambs and see if it matches up in any ways. And it really does. I mean, in my mind, I I had kind of forgotten that Jeffrey Dahmer was that was revealed. He was arrested while the movie was still in theaters. I kind of forgotten how closely they'd been linked in popular culture. I'd forgotten about how all the post Silence of the Lambs, post Seven films, how quickly they arrived, and just how it seems almost overnight serial killer movies just became this genre in the I mean they've been around for decades, but in the 90s they became like an almost once a month new serial killer film, and how strange that was. And I do think Silence of the Lambs, and as I mentioned in the book to a later degree, Seven, I think those two films absolutely changed horror films in the 90s for a while, the course of it, because I think they were kind of struggling to figure out what to do at the end of the 80s, because obviously you had the slasher films, things were kind of winding down a little bit. And then all of a sudden, Silence of the Lambs came out in 1991, wins Best Picture, and you have kind of a new kind of villain that people are interested in the 90s.
Yeah, it's and the way you draw that correlation to those things is fascinating. Again, there's things I want to talk about, but I don't want to talk about them because I don't want to ruin the read for anybody. Yeah, so kind of complicates the interview a little
I
bit in that case.
understand.
But with that being said, hopefully it spurs enough interest in people to realize they need to pick this book up and
Oh, I hope so.
and go
Nice,
through it.
thank you.
I blew through it. It was just totally fascinating. How long did you spend actually writing it? How long did the whole process from conception to publication take?
This was actually relatively quick. And when I talked to my editor about it, we wanted to do this quickly. And it wasn't because of Trump, though weirdly, I think when I signed the contract for the book, I think Trump had only mentioned Lecter once or twice. And it was kind of this funny thing where like, oh yeah, like this is kind of timely and weird. And then like the month after I signed the contract, he mentioned it like 5 times or something. We're like, this is strange. But I think, I think the whole thing was almost 2.5 years, honestly, from starting it to finishing it. And again, I was really lucky with research because I had access to Ted Talley, who wrote the screenplay for Silence of the Lambs. I interviewed Michael Mann, who directed Manhunter and wrote Manhunter, obviously. So I had some great sources, but really, just being able to go through the John and Demi archives. I mean, there's faxes between him and Tom Harris. There's so much intimate stuff about the making of Silence of the Lambs, and a little bit about Hannibal, which Jonathan Demme did not make, but which was the sequel. That stuff was I was very lucky to have so much research material that I could get through pretty quickly. Other projects I've worked on. I think I did a book a couple of years ago, and I think I interviewed like 140 people. I think for this, I only interviewed maybe 40 or 50, and unfortunately, a couple people passed away while I was. I wanted to talk to Roger Corman, who's in Silence of the Lambs, obviously is a horror legend, and I've been talking to his office, and he passed away, and some of Thomas Harris's editors passed away while I was doing this. So I was so grateful to get the people that I got because they were incredibly knowledgeable, and because the number of people who worked on these films is quietly lowering every year. So I was glad to get them now when I could.
Yeah, it's amazing you mentioned that scene with the Roger Corman, and so many people don't realize that that's Roger Corman and George Romero in that
Oh yeah, and
in that
Corman is
scene.
such a
Yeah,
great actor. Corman would pop up in things once in a while, and he wouldn't have huge scenes or a lot of lines, but he was kind of like Sidney Pollack. When he came on screen, he had such a presence that if he just had 3 or 4 lines, you were like, this guy's not an actor, but he's got some sort of power that you can see what he must command on a set. Yeah,
yeah,
I love Roger Corman in that movie. Yeah, it's a super quick cameo, and Romero too. Yeah, with the Pittsburgh connection of shooting Sounds of the Lambs all over Pittsburgh.
yeah, yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff. Uh, is there again? This isn't more Hannibal, but is there another or is there another literary film character you would ever find yourself or consider doing a similar project for? Because I tell you what, I've never read anything quite like how you formulated this book. It was kind of unusual. Again,
Oh
a
well, I mean,
biography of an actual fictional character, but at the same time, how you were able to draw all the different pieces of that character, the people that made it what it is. I think you might be onto something.
Well, it's fine. First of all, thank you. I mean, I have to give full credit to my editor, Simon Schuster, Sean Manning, because he was the one who really. We were talking about Silence of the Lambs book, and then he said, "What about a book about Lecter?" And call it, and he came up with the title on the. He came with the title Hannibal Lecter: A Life on a phone call, and he kind of laughed, and we were both kind of like, "Actually, that's a pretty good title." Um, it's tough because I think I wouldn't want to do another villain if I did another character like this. I mean, what I would love to find is another character who lets you tell. The great thing about Hannibal Lecter is that he's a literary character, he's a film character, he's a TV character, and he's a cultural figure. So you can talk about the TV industry in the 2010s. You can talk about the movie industry in the 90s. You can talk about the book industry in the 80s. So you can talk about those different pockets of culture. And I would love to find another character who is kind of across all those different fields. I think it's more fun to write a book that's a little bit about TV, a little bit about books, a little bit about movies, than it is to write a whole book on just sort of one medium. It's tough though because it's like you think, oh, Darth Vader, but boy, is there anything about Darth Vader we don't know? What can you say about Darth Vader, the character that's kind of not already been done? So I'd have to think about that. I mean, I do. I have at times thought, even though I'm not a huge fan, I do think that like I do think a book on Shrek right now and Shrek culture would be
you know
huge
what? You
because
know what? That's an awesome one, actually.
I mean I'm kind of actually I'm soft pitching it now, my but like, and I'm not even like I'm too old for those movies really, but I'm kind of like there's something. This is a total tangent, but like Shrek's hold on people I know under 35, it's kind of remarkable. Like they are. It's one of the few characters where people ironically and earnestly love him with the same fervor, and for some
Yeah,
reason. And
yeah, it's true.
there's a lot there too, but it's tough. It's tough to find a character as kind of culturally significant and also as kind of like who just with the longevity of Hannibal Lecter. So it would be kind of tough to find some, but I'd be open to doing that again for sure.
Yeah, again, I think you're onto something with the concept. Is I guess is the point I was trying to
Yeah.
make. Again, a little bit off the subject of the book, but what did you think of the Hannibal TV series? just like as a fan of the
Oh,
character?
it's from I hadn't watched all of it until I did the book because when it came out, I had very young kids, and I was like, I can't watch something this violent at this point. I just didn't have time, and I was kind of like, I needed a little more comfort food at that point, TV wise. What I think is really amazing about it, and I credit this fully to Brian Fuller. I know he had a writing staff, but I can't think of, I'm not exaggerating. I can't think of any adaptation of a writer's work that is both as faithful to Tom. I mean, I watched the show after rereading all these books. There's some real deep cut stuff of Tom Harris. There's some really tiny ideas from the books that he blows up in a really fascinating way. But he also adds his own voice to it in a way which is really fascinating. So, I think he describes it at one point like, that they saw themselves as mashup DJs, like they're spinning Sounds of the Lambs while getting ready to play Manhunter or something like that. And I do think it's a pretty remarkably faithful adaptation, but it's not so faithful that it feels like you're just re-experiencing the books. And the show is wild. I mean, sometimes it's way too grotesque for my tastes. But there was never. I mean, and there's stuff in there I was like, oh god, this is so gross. Like I can't believe this got on TV. It's really remarkable that
Yeah.
was on NBC. It's wild to me. But it's a fascinating achievement, and also one of the few TV shows that I know it ended earlier than he wanted it to, or the cast wanted to, but it feels like a perfect send off. Like I don't want to ruin how the show ends, but
Yeah.
the ending of that show, that last episode, is one of the great ambiguous endings. Maybe not ambiguous, but you can read so much into it and be very satisfied as a conclusion to that series, while also wanting more. So yeah, it's a real achievement.
Yeah, and they kind of had to dance around. They didn't have rights to Silence of the Lambs, you mentioned in your book, and
Yeah,
they kind of had to dance around the whole Clarice thing because they
yeah.
couldn't really mention it. So,
But I think it's
yeah,
for the benefit. Actually, I actually think that show is all for the best because he had to turn to Hannibal, and he had to go to Hannibal the book, which has a lot of flaws and has some, but also has some great characters in there, and he had to find a way to make that work, which I think really turned out well. The Hannibal stuff the Hannibal stuff in Hannibal is really interesting what he does with it, and is, I would say, better in some ways than what happened in the book.
and to be able to find another actor who could. I mean,
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins was Hannibal. I mean, there was no other way around it.
Oh
And
no, I mean it's remarkable that he was able to kind of find an actor who can play that completely different. And Brian Cox does it so different too. I mean, it is, I know there's been rumors about a new Hannibal Lecter project at some point, and I know people kind of roll their eyes at being like, well, why reboot that Anthony Hopkins? But like, I do think it is a character that you can play in multiple ways. And I think even just looking at Brian Cox and Anthony Hopkins, how differently they played that character, and their dialogue is so faithful to the books themselves, shows how
right.
much room for interpretation there is there.
It's great. It's great. Well, again, your book just takes a super deep dive into all of this. If you're a fan of the books or the movies or the TV show, there is something in Brian's book for you. So I want to highly recommend you get it. I believe it comes out February 10th, if my memory is not failing me.
I think so,
Uh,
yeah.
it's available for pre-order now. Pre-order it, get it as quick as you can, and block off a weekend and take it in.
Thanks so much, Dave. I appreciate that. It's really nice of you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day,
Oh
and
yeah.
I'm eagerly awaiting your next project. So get busy.
Shrek a Life coming 2029 or coming never. I don't know.
I love it. I expect to be mentioned in the foreword as to being the person
I'll give
who
you credits, yeah.
read All right. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dave. Bye.
Bye bye.